Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's my pleasure to rise today to make a few comments on an act respecting the registration of tourist accommodations. I am very pleased to see that there's obviously dated regulations that are within the current Tourism Act that need to be taken out, completely replaced. And we've heard a lot of commentary with regard to what's being taken away. But not so much how what's being actually introduced is going to be affecting the smaller tourism providers that perhaps are right now providing accommodations under the radar, if I can use that term. So I do understand the importance for traditional tourism operations to be able to have a level playing field, obviously, with those who perhaps are just coming on board, and with this new shared economy, it's a whole new world as far as how short-term rentals are able to be offered out to the global environment and to tourists who are coming here to our province. It's an extremely important aspect of providing accommodations in our province, especially in rural Nova Scotia, where perhaps we don't have the business case to be able to have a hotel, as the Honourable Minister has mentioned. We just don't have the numbers, basically, that would warrant on a full-time basis having a larger hotel or maybe even a bed and breakfast in that area, that people are able to provide accommodations in their homes, and I know many people who do. So it's good to hear that if it's your primary residence, that there will be no need to register underneath this new act. However, there's needs to be clarification, I believe, as far as what occurs for someone who is in their primary residence but perhaps has on the same property identification number an extra dwelling or two on their property. Will that be taxed at a commercial rate, or will that be taxed at a residential rate? We still don't know. And with these sort of things that come about, the details are always within the regulations, and so we're passing this act without really knowing what's going to be in the regulations per se. But being that we do know that everyone now who is a platform operator or a host for a short-term accommodation rental situation, and that would be 28 days or less, they will have to register under this act. They will not be permitted to offer short-term rentals unless they actually register. And there will be a summary conviction fine associated with that of up to $1,000 if you do not register. So I want to make certain that that is information that people do know about. And it's there's also an area within this act that says as well that gives a little bit more leeway to let me read it here. It says, prescribing additional penalties for non-compliance with the Act, that the Governor and Council may make regulations to prescribe additional penalties for non-compliance. We're not really quite sure what that means, and I think we need further clarification on that. Those people who are oftentimes offering short-term rental, and I please would like to clarify that I do want to see a level playing field for those people who are in the tourism industry, that play by the rules, who pay commercial tax rates, who are good citizens and good providers of tourism accommodations across this province. They're the backbone of what makes tourism so great here in the province of Nova Scotia. But we do have this new sharing economy that really is taking hold as a whole other avenue of being able to provide accommodations. And I certainly would not want to see that being harnessed in a way that potentially could really reverse the trend of people opening up either their own personal homes or perhaps a cottage that they have or a family home that they're trying to maintain here in either the urban core or the rural core. A lot of the time people rent them out for short-term rentals in order to be able to just pay for maintenance costs. So we'd really like to make 100% certain that people and that the trend that we're seeing as far as the shared economy and specifically and obviously in accommodations is not going to be held back in any way by these regulations that are forthcoming through the Act. The other thing that I'd like to bring up as well, Mr. Speaker, and I think that the Minister has done a fine job as far as having stakeholders around the table. I know that's been ongoing for quite some time, and I believe, if my information is correct, that there has been representation from the service providers like Airbnb around that table. But what concerns me is because, again, this is very much a new industry, a new way of providing accommodations. I'm wondering who was around that table who would have been the voice for an association, as far as I know, it doesn't exist yet for those who are the actual hosts. So those host families who are providing accommodation, there is no association representing member per member currently in Nova Scotia. So I'm very concerned about how their voices could be represented at that table if there's not an association driven by membership to be able to advocate on their behalf. So with those few words, or maybe a little bit more than a few words, I'll take my seat, Mr. Speaker, and I look forward to anyone and encourage anyone in this province who may be affected by these changes to come forward in law amendments. Thank you.